I am particularly pleased to have these guys, incredibly talented and distinguished playwrights here for the Writers Guild panel, who have a passel of awards among them, almost all of the awards if you throw them all together, Tonys, Pulitzers, etc. Specifically, what we came together to talk about is adapting one's own material. We have the films of the plays 6 Degrees of Separation by John Guare, Dinner with Friends by Donald Margulies, and Rabbit Hole by David Lindsay Abaire. First, let's just talk, maybe if you can give a little of the story about how the plays, the story of how they got turned into movies or the screenplays were optioned. Maybe we can start with 6 Degrees.
Well, 6 Degrees had something very interesting. Lincoln Center Theater does something unheard of, but now more theaters are starting to pick up on it. They take no subsidiary rights. They feel that the play belongs to the writer, and any money that they make out of it in their New York production is enough for them. But because of that, they're surrendering the subsidiary rights. I got a choice, a very unusual choice to make when, after 6 Degrees opened, I got to be the one to choose the director rather than the producer. The producer is usually the one who makes the choice of the movie sale, but I got to be the one in charge of that. So I would meet directors and I would interview them, and I met a number of people, and one I remember very vividly was very excited. It was a director whom I really admired, and had made movies that I liked and won Oscars and was terrific. So I went to meet him, but I said, not wanting to be dazzled by the credits, I said, describe to me the movie you want to make of my play. And this director said, well, he said, I think what I want to change is, he said, I think that a Broadway audience, a theater audience, can take a jagged narrative, can hop around in time. He said, I'm not knocking a movie audience, but I believe that you have to lay things out much more simply. So what I want to do is, your play is about this young black man. I want to show him first in the ghetto, wherever he lives, in the poverty that he lives in. So we see the need for him to get into that world, and we see his struggles and his finding new identities. And I said, well, when does the play begin? And they said, well, we come to that, but I'm not interested in that. What I'm really interested in, is there's one character in your play that really intrigues me and I'm fascinated with, and that's the detective. I said, the detective has 2 lines in the play. But in the movie, it's going to be a black man who's an authentic black man who goes on a hunt for this black man living alive. And I want to put these 2 together. And he said, I think this could make a very, very, very powerful movie. And I said, well, that's a great idea, but you must do that on your own nickel, and not do it on my movie. Next. And I had a number of meetings like that. Finally, one day I met, one director said, let's just get the actors up there, get like Meryl Streep or Jane Fonda, or just get the cameras rolling and just see what happens. I said, next, And I met Fred Skepsey, who said, I really like the way that you tell the story. I like the way we're figuring it out. And I love the way that I love Stockard Channing. I want Stockard Channing to be the lead. I think it's imperative that she's in it, even though the studios wanted other people. It was a wonderful experience. I mean, I love Fred. The only rule that we were given was that the man who was putting up the money for the film at MGM said, I will only put up my money if you hire this kid named Will Smith. And we said, a TV actor? We said, we're not going to have any TV actor who's never made a movie we're not just going to take him for that. We said, we'll each interview him, but separately. So on separate nights, Fred went one night to meet Will backstage. He had Prince of Bel-Air on the set of Prince of Bel-Air. I was very, and I was really determined, not to be swayed at all. And within 5 minutes of talking to him, I realized that my play is a play about people who let somebody into their living room, and here is a show where 15 million people a week let Will Smith into their living room. I found him adorable, tough, terrific. I just loved it, and Fred said I felt exactly the same way. So that was the only glaring thing that we had to do was, was casting that role. And Will came, and the money happened, and it was a tremendously happy, very, very happy experience.
So, Donald, your plays was a happy, fun time doing your adaptation for Dinner with Friends?
It's my eyes fill with tears listening to John's wonderful story. I didn't have such a great time. The play itself, well, let me backtrack a little bit. The Dinner with Friends, I felt could only work on HBO. That I had already had a taste of the studio system and play adaptation with my play Sight Unseen, which at my very first meeting at MGM, when they were interested in the rights, they said about this play about a Jewish American painter, does he have to be Jewish and does he have to be a painter? And I'm not joking. So with Dinner with Friends, I felt that HBO, which at that time was beginning to really create a new kind of genre of plays that are filmed. Wit had already been done, Angels was in the process of being done, and the fact that Dinner with Friends was something they responded to, I thought would be the ideal venue for it. But it sort of got out of my hands very quickly. Anyway, the night of the revelation of the divorce occurs on a snowy night in Connecticut. And it's so snowy that the airport is shut down. And one of the first conversations I had with the director was, he said, I'm not going to shoot this in snow. I said, what do you mean? He said, have you ever shot in snow? I said, no. He said, it's a nightmare. I'm not going to shoot in snow. I said, we're talking about a couple of exteriors. He said, I'm not going to shoot in snow. I said, well, then how are you going to justify the airport being shut down, which is, a major plot point, actually. And he said, well, it'll rain. I said, it's going to have to be a monsoon in Connecticut to shut the airport. Well, it's a monsoon in the movie, apparently. It's very weird. It's very strange. I'm beginning to froth.
Yeah, you're getting very upset, Donald.
But it's, that really was just part of the beginning of the end of my dream of actually seeing this realized in a way that I would be proud of. It was a bewildering experience. I did not get a lot of support from the company.
Did you like the casting? Were you in on the casting?
Was I in on the casting? I was told about the casting. But I did show up for rehearsal, which I was barely informed about, incidentally. It was like, oh, really? We're rehearsing? But it was clear on that first table read that the actors were very thrilled to have me there. And my director really could not deal with that. He was extremely disrespectful. And he walked me to my car. I left after the first day of rehearsal because it was clear that I was not going to endure 10 days of this. And he walked me to my car and he said, don't worry, you worry too much. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this a long time. Famous last words. Anyway, that's my very sad tale of woe.
We'll get back to some of. And David, you ended up, I don't know how you ended up with John Cameron Mitchell.
The director came later.
So what was the process like?
I got a call from Nicole Kidman saying,
Hello, David. Hello, David.
Yeah,
this is
just
Nicole.
like you picked up the phone and.
No, that's not what happened. Her people called my people. And then we talked, we met.
Does she have an Australian accent?
She does, has a very thick Australian accent.
And she's very tall, isn't she?
She's very tall.
She's very tall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I am not. The way Nicole found out about the play is she was in Nashville where she lives, and she was reading the New York Times and she read a review of the play, and she said, this sounds really interesting. She asked for a copy of the script. She read the script. She did not go see the Broadway play, but her Persari, who helps run her company, went and saw the play, and they said, "Will you sit down and talk to us about this?" And so I sat down and talked to them, and they said, "Do you think there's a movie in there?" And I said, "I think there might be a movie in there." And unlike John, I did not have a lot of people interested in turning Rabbit Hole into a movie. The play is about parents contending with the death of a child. So
Big box office.
big box office. I had also had, a few experiences in Hollywood that were not terrific. I had maybe 3 of those experiences where I'd been hired to write one movie, and it's somewhere in the process, people decided to make a completely different movie. Or people were making different movies in their heads and pretending that we were all agreeing to make the same movie. And so with those not so great experiences under my belt, I took a meeting with Nicole Kidman. And she said, do you think there's a movie in it? And I said, I do, but here's the thing. I have my name on a couple things that aren't really mine, but my name's up there. I only want to do it if it really is mine, if you're interested in telling this story in the way that I've told it. And I could make all the changes that one makes when adapting a play into a movie, and I told her several of the ways I want to do that. But more importantly to me is that it stay that way, and you hire a director that understands the material and the tone of it and doesn't want to turn it into something else. And I get to hang around, and I get to talk to the actors, and I get to be on the casting, and all of these things that writers generally don't get to be a part of in Hollywood. And Nicole said, absolutely, you can have all of those things because I have no money to offer you. And she said, and I will work for free, and I will get a bunch of people to work for next to nothing, but we will make that movie that you want to make because I want to make that movie. And so I crossed my fingers, because people say those things sometimes and they don't always mean it. And this was going to be through Nicole's production company. She had just started her own production company. So this would be her first movie as a producer, in addition to wanting to star in the movie. And we started, and I wrote a draft, and I got a few notes, and they're like, this is fantastic, let's shoot this movie, let's get a director. And they said, what do you think about John Cameron Mitchell? And I said, I love John Cameron Mitchell, and I love that he was a man of the theater. I love that he was someone who had taken his own successful theatrical piece, Hedwig, and turned it into, I thought, an incredibly successful movie. Totally, completely different animals, but he never lost the spirit of what that stage piece was. But it's felt very cinematic. And so I thought, that sounds like a great idea. And I met with John, and he connected to the piece in a very personal way. And he seemed to understand it and understand the tone of it. And because he was a writer, he was incredibly respectful of me and wanted me to be a part of the process. So again, I crossed my fingers and said, okay, let's go with this guy. He seems great. And then we started, and everybody kept their promise. I'm sorry, this must be horrible for you to hear. Well, I think the fact that there was no money involved and no time, everybody was working for nothing. They made the movie for $4 million. Wow. Nicole called up Aaron Eckhart and said, please do this movie. And Aaron said, okay, I'll do it, because Nicole asked me to do it. And Diane Wiest and Sandra Oh and all these great actors, and everybody was working for nothing. And we all held hands, and we filmed in 28 days. And because there was no time or no money, nobody had time to change the lines, and nobody had time to overthink it or ask me too many questions. They rehearsed it, and they shot it, and they said my lines, and then John edited it all together.
Well, it's extremely unusual.
Incredibly unusual, and I suspect I'll never have that experience again. But
not necessarily.